Okay, so today I got 2 pressure washers, the same customer. Now I've worked with this customer before, and that's a very important part of this conversation. Also, he has another pressure washer that I've worked on before. And everything he brings me is some sort of fuel related issue. I've worked on his chainsaws, and I don't remember everything I've worked on so far. So I would imagine he's in the business of dealing with trading, selling equipment. I'm not sure. Regardless, asked me to take a look at these 2. He said this one doesn't run, doesn't start, and that one had a fuel leak. So I'm going to start with this one. Now, that one over there is the one that we really need to talk about, but we're going to start with this one, and I'll show you what we got going on here. So I've taken the air filter off, and anytime you diagnose a no start, first thing you need to do, that's your best tool right here, starting fluid. You start with starting fluid. Check, see if it's got gas. Heck, even if it doesn't have gas, start with starting fluid. It has gas. I've turned the gas on. I don't know if the gas is any good, but that's not really that important to figure out if we need to continue on. We know that if the gas isn't any good, that the carburetor isn't going to be any good. If the gas is rotten, you've already rotten the carburetor. It's going to be all gunked up. So what you're going to do is going to make sure your choke is not engaged. You want to be able to spray this in, and it gets into the throat and into the piston cylinder of the engine. And then we're going to give it a pull. Now, if there's a carburetor issue, it will start and die because it's just going to run on the starting fluid. That's all it's going to do. And as soon as it runs out of starting fluid, it will die. If it's something else, it won't start at all. Okay, so we definitely have a fuel problem. Whether it's a carburetor or gas, doesn't really matter at this point. Now I know that I can at least start with the carburetor. I was going to replace it regardless anyways. With aftermarket, you can get a $20 carburetor, and it comes with the hoses and just all kinds of stuff. So it's actually cheaper to buy the carburetor, even if you're not going to put it on, which I would, just to get the hoses and the filters and the shutoff valves. It's just cheaper. A shutoff valve's 10 bucks, but you can get these aftermarkets pretty cheap. So we'll go ahead and get a carburetor for that. And once we get it running, if there's any other issues that come up, then I could talk to the customer, but we will get it running. You know, it's got valves. He may want to do an overhead valve adjustment or change the oil. Okay, let's go talk about this other one. I'm going to admit I already started to work on this one. Not work, but diagnose it. And I just wanted to see where the gas was leaking. So I filled it up with gas. Well, I didn't fill it completely up. I guess that's a mistake I may have made, but I was going to get to it. But I got distracted by other problems. So it's a metal gas tank. And I filled it about half full, but I didn't get it past this thing. I'm kind of thinking that the seal that keeps the top and the bottom half sealed together has broken loose. It's kind of a guess, but I did notice gas was dripping from this area. Now I wasn't sure if it was because I spilt some gas or if it was coming out of here. Again, I didn't fill it up that high, but once I got gas in there and it wasn't spewing out of the carburetor or no major leaks, I thought, well, I at least ought to check before I get too involved to see if this thing's going to start. So I did the same thing, took the air filter off, put some starting fluid in it, and I started pulling it, and it wouldn't start. Well, first of all, you kind of get a sense of the problem right away, and I really felt like there was a no compression issue on this. I really felt like that. But that's not the next step. The next step is you got to check the spark plug for spark. And you'll probably see that the spark plug is already out. And I was going to check it, but I tell you, it was so hard to get out. And what you're probably not going to see was it was cross-threaded. Somebody put the spark plug in there and didn't get the threads to line up, and it's cross-threaded. There's several things going on here, and before the commenters get in there and tell me what I should be doing or shouldn't be doing, hear me out. You can tap that hole. There are taps available. Or you can get yourself a little hacksaw, and you can cut 4 strips into the threads here and make yourself a tap. So if you know what a tap looks like, it's got little cutouts in 4 different spots. So you cut that out, and you can use the spark plug to re-tap that. The problem with that is you are now weakening your cylinder head. It is now weaker, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong. I mean, you could eventually blow this out. You got to remember, there's a ton of heat and a ton of pressure on that spark plug all the time, and now you've just removed some thread and some material to make it not as strong. So as a mechanic doing business for a very small and tight-knit community, you don't want to be going around with a possible safety issue. Now, another thing is when you're tapping it, you are cutting metal away. Now, this is an aluminum head. So when you're cutting that metal, you're supposed to put grease around your tap so that it collects that metal. But there is a chance that metal can get down into the piston. And when you do that, now you're going to damage the rings. So now I am taking a risk of charging my customer so much money to fix, remember that's the word, fix, a problem, and I may have created another problem. The only way to guarantee that there's no metal in the cylinder head is to take the cylinder head off. And if you're going to do that, then you really need to start replacing parts anyways. Since the cylinder head is already broken, you're taking it off, you just as well replace it. If you're going to take it off and now you got rings that you got to take out, you're going to have to replace those rings. Maybe a new piston. So there's things that are going to happen that you got to deal with. Now, to make matters worse on this particular motor, you may see, and it's going to be really hard to see, but right here at the top, you'll see that it's one color, but right there at the top of the hole is a different color. As I was taking that spark plug out, now remember I had the spark plug wrenches wrapped around it, so I didn't see that happening. It cracked the cylinder head right there, and a little piece of metal, aluminum, as soon as I pulled the spark plug out, fell down the hole and into the piston. Well, aluminum is not magnetic, so you can't reach in there with a magnet to grab it. So what my goal was, I mean, I already knew that I wasn't going to be able to fix this. As soon as I did it, I knew I wasn't going to be able to fix it without taking the whole engine apart. So I tried to slowly pull the rope, and hoping that that piece of metal didn't fall in between the piston and the cylinder wall. Well, it did. And I only pulled it maybe a 1/4 inch, maybe a little less than a 1/4 inch, and it locked the engine up. That piece of metal got in between the piston and the cylinder wall. So now the piston is damaged, probably the rings are damaged, definitely the cylinder wall is going to be scratched. So it's completely ruined. So in order to do this, which I would have had it done anyways to do it properly, is replace the cylinder head, the piston, the rings. You got to replace everything. Well, the cylinder is $150, or the cylinder head is $150. And then you got the piston and rings, those are aftermarket. You can't find aftermarket for this particular engine for the cylinder head. That is OEM. You can find aftermarket for the piston and the rings. So I think it was $150 or maybe it was $197. I guess it was $190. That's what it was, $197. And then you got another 20 bucks in rings and pistons, or rings and pistons. So now we're up to, roughly $250 plus labor charge. And when you get up in these kind of prices and this kind of work, you start charging more. I guess I wasn't going to charge much. So, because what I told him is this is going to be at least $350 repair, at least. I didn't quote it. I said, this is just an estimate, a guess. If you want me to look into this, I will, and I'll give you a more solid price. But now that I've actually looked into it, which I didn't when I had called him, This repair is going to be 400 bucks at least, because you got labor cost. So of course he said no, I don't want to repair it. You can buy a new machine probably. Now this is a commercial machine, so let's just say $300. You can buy a brand new one. So it doesn't make sense to do this. Now engines nowadays are getting a little bit more expensive. You might be up 500 bucks. The pumps, you know, they're expensive, but well, you know, at what point does it not become worth it? I don't think that gas-driven pressure washers are really worth the hassle. They are a big hassle. They're expensive to fix, expensive to repair parts. I had a pressure washer here a while back, and the pump was bad. Now I'll explain how a pump can go bad. And it was $100 for a new pump. You know, you put labor behind that, and you're up to 150, 200 bucks, and that wasn't a commercial one. You can buy a Troy-built home-use pressure washer for maybe $200. So I mean, they're not that expensive. So it doesn't make a lot of sense unless it's a carburetor issue to even take it to mechanic. Now, the reason they're a big hassle is you got to drain the gas. Well, there's no way to drain the gas on these machines. With a generator, they put a drain in it. You can open it up. There's on the carburetor, there's a little drain hose and a little screw. You just unscrew it, that drain hose, you collect it into a jar, you got your gas out of it. But with these, you can't drain them, so you have to siphon it out and run it out. The other thing is you got to put it away in a heated building in the wintertime. Now, I know somebody's going to say, I live in Florida, I don't need to worry about that. Okay, but that's 1 out of 50 states. The rest of them get kind of cold and can get below freezing. You got to take these in. Got to keep it in a warm building. Well, I live in a tiny house. I can't bring this in. That's why we bought an electric one. It fits under the bed. I put it over the shower. I mean, I don't have to bring it in. And there's really no way on some of these to drain out the water so it doesn't freeze. The other thing is, with the electric one, you can let go of the handle when you're spraying. So you got the handle, let it go, walk away, go eat supper, heck, call it quits for the day, do it tomorrow. And nothing happens to the machine. You wake up next day, you go back out, and you go back to work. With these, on the other hand, you have to be constantly spraying the water, non-stop nearly. The longest you can go without holding that trigger down is 30 seconds. You let go of that, the timer starts. If you wait longer than 30 seconds, you'll start heating up that pump, and it's going to burn up. A lot of people burn up the pumps, and they have no idea why. Those pumps are not cheap. They're $100. You can't even find used ones because everybody's using them up. They're always burning them up. So I don't even like that you got to keep it running. Now, this one uses 2.8 gallons of water per minute. Well, we live off-grid. We don't have a lot of water flow. A whole different subject. So when we bought the electric one, that was only 1.2 gallons per minute. So it uses less water. Granted, there's not as much pressure. I have 1,600 pounds. This is 3,000 pounds. This one's 2,800 pounds. You can get an electric one for 2,000 pounds. We didn't because of the water flow. But 1,600 pounds does everything you need at home. You can get those little spinner tips, zzz, and it basically draws out like a pencil line in a big circle really fast. And those things clean absolutely spectacular. So you don't need a lot of pressure to make that work. So that spinner tip's 14 bucks. Or you can get a 3,000 one, 3,000 PSI one, and you're constantly working on it. These are always here. I have one here all the time. I almost decided not to buy that electric one simply because I have one here all the time that eventually I'm going to have to test to make sure I got it running, and then I can just wash whatever it is I wanted to wash. I've washed my truck, washed the deck, washed the porch, some of the porch, washed the bridge. So I don't really, they're always here, which is funny because I mean, how many people really own them? So I would recommend that if you're going to buy one, maybe look at a high, if you want a high pressure one, at least look at the higher pressure electric ones first. They're just easier to store, easy to deal with, and you don't have to worry about it shutting the engine off every time you want to walk away and maybe use a towel to scrub something off. So if you click this up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was working on something. So I hope I can inspire you, maybe not to get one of these, so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.